It has been 5 years since the release of AnimalCrossing New Horizons, and within those 5 years, the community has had its many ups and downs, from trading scams, PETA protests, and its removal from e-commerce websites like Taobao in China. New Horizons was definitely the talk of the town, especially during its prime days, and while it has simmered down since then, there is no denying that New Horizons catapulted Animal Crossing's popularity to a mainstream level. When you think of cozy gaming, Animal Crossing is often one of the games that is tied to that community. Don't get me wrong though, Animal Crossing has always had a community before the release of New Horizons, but I think New Horizons was definitely a bridge for introducing new fans to the game at a grand scale. And if there's one thing that the new and former fans of Animal Crossing can agree on, it's that New Horizons is unpolished. It could have done more, actually it should have. It deserves more updates, more content, but I will go on about that in another video. Instead, I want to shift today's topic on what New Horizons did right, just cause I think the game deserves some slack, and if I had to say my gaming hot take, it would be that New Horizons is not the worst Animal Crossing game. There's a lot of features about the game that I appreciate, and I think it has gotten swept under the rug over the years. Underappreciated, especially coming from a longtime fan of the series. So I've been playing Animal Crossing since I was in elementary school. I had it on the GameCube and followed it from there, which, side note, you do not need to have played every series from a game to form an opinion on it. For example, if you only played New Horizons, then your opinion about Animal Crossing is just as valid as mine. I remember talking to this guy once about Animal Crossing, and at one point I made a complaint about New Horizons, and he got very defensive about it, that you'd think he worked on the game. Anyways, he said that I don't know what I'm talking about because I haven't played the other Animal Crossing games, which okay, he was wrong about that and I corrected him and he conceded that I must know what I'm talking about then because he only played New Leaf before New Horizons, and that's kind of what irritates me about some people in the gaming community when we try to invalidate other people's opinions over little things like this, because at the end of the day, his opinion about New Horizons is just as valid as mine, regardless of our gaming history. But the reason why I bring up my gaming history with Animal Crossing is because it heavily shapes my opinions about the game and the features that I think are underappreciated or have since been glossed over. The way I look at the game will be a little different from someone's first Animal Crossing game being New Horizons. For example, villagers moving out of your island cannot be done without your permission. This is something that I haven't really seen more people talk about, and it's one of my favorite features about New Horizons. So, in the past, villagers could move in and out of your town without your permission, which in a way emulates real life. People come and go, and that includes your neighbors. But for Animal Crossing, this feature always stressed me out, especially when I liked a villager and wanted them to stay. In fact, the reason why I stopped playing New Leaf is because I'm afraid that when I log in, my favorite villagers have moved out, and I'm not ready to face it. My favorite villagers in my New Leaf town were Marshall, Bluebear, and Grizzly. They were also my villagers from when I first started the game. The rest of them had left, but I was able to keep those 3, and trying to keep your favorite villager is incredibly finicky in the past Animal Crossing games. It's not even guaranteed that you telling them no will keep them from going. You can say no and they'll still choose to go. Instead, you can attempt to increase your chances of them reconsidering on moving by creating a stronger bond with your villager. But keep in mind, this isn't a guarantee like it is in New Horizons. That happened to me with Stitches when I had him in my town. I wanted Stitches to stay, but because he had only lived in my town for like a week, I didn't have a strong enough bond with him to increase his chance of reconsidering, which sucked because I did want to get to know him and was looking forward to having him in my town, just for him to leave as quickly as he arrived. Funny thing is, that's actually why I have him on my island, New Horizons. When I found Stitch on an island, I immediately asked him to move in. No second thoughts necessary. Anyways, the finicky system is the same for asking a villager to move out. There have been a countless amount of times where a villager finally asked to move out, and when I agreed, they were offended and it made them stay instead. Can you imagine how that would be for New Horizons? So many people who play New Horizons feel like it takes ages for the villager they want gone to leave, and then it finally happens just for the villager to change their mind. People would be so upset. And I understand the argument that this makes the game feel more real. Nothing stays the same forever, so it adds meaning to the bonds you create in your town. But I also feel like it low-key punishes the player for not making time for their villagers, especially the casual player that cannot play Animal Crossing at least once a day or a week. And this can be unfair to those who are busy with school or work and want to come back and unwind with their favorite villager, only to be saddened that they left. I also feel like it puts AC players that like to time travel in New Leaf in a tight position because you run the risk of any villagers that you like moving out by time traveling. So I feel like the villager moving in or out was done right in New Horizons. It was done in a way that doesn't punish those who can't play Animal Crossing as often as they want or want to time travel. Plus, if you want to keep your villagers spontaneous, that is still an option. You don't have to decide who moves into your island. You can leave the plot empty and eventually a random villager will move in. And technically we were all forced to take in one random villager on our island and not all of us like that. Me especially. I'm talking about me. For New Horizons, the first villager that stays at your campsite has to move in. No one else will visit your campsite until that villager moves in. Mine was Hippox, who reminds me of Shrek. So me being upset was an understatement. Which reminds me that New Horizons has given us the most freedom from prior AC games to not only decide whether a villager stays or goes, but who specifically. And I truly love that they allowed this because as a longtime player, it allowed me to reunite with a lot of villagers that I shared many memories with, one of them being Lobo. Lobo and I have a history that goes way back. He was a villager in my town on the GameCube, and this was back when cranky villagers lived up to their name. They weren't these grumpy old man personality type that they play up in New Horizons. No. They had a temper. This was not some petty beef because they're an ugly villager to me. It was beyond that. But over time, Lobo grew on me and I started to think he was cool. He was a lone wolf. Literally, he's actually the only wolf that has ever lived in my town, and whenever I started a new Animal Crossing game like City Folk or New Leaf, I had hoped that Lobo would turn up, but he didn't. And I'm happy that New Horizons I was able to have him live in my town again, and I'm sure that many others who have played Animal Crossing for a long time were overjoyed to reunite with any of their favorite villagers. I also think that this newfound freedom on villager hunting has introduced me to villagers that I didn't know existed, or I knew they existed, but seeing them in-game, something clicked. For example, Bam is a villager that I think is cool, but I never really sought him out. I wasn't specifically villager hunting for him, but when I saw his character for the first time while island hopping, I decided to take him in, and since then, I've made silly memories with Bam. So I don't think this freedom on selecting our villagers is a bad thing, and even then, it's still random because you never know who you're going to meet on the island, and you might get repeats. Sadly, a lot of repeats maybe. It also requires Nook Miles tickets, so it's not like they're handing out villagers like candy. If anything, I think it's a fair trade-off. Because in order for us to get Nook Miles tickets, we need to earn Nook Miles, and it gives the player the option to use those Nook Miles for a chance at choosing or searching for the villager you want, or other things too. You can redeem them for other stuff. So for those of us who have been wanting this opportunity for a while, they implemented it into the game in a way that I think is fair and makes sense, and I enjoy the addition of Nook Miles challenges. So Nook Miles are earned through a mixture of daily tasks or long-term challenges. Some of these challenges are fulfilled by completing a certain milestone or a task, such as completing your Critterpedia, which I haven't yet. I really need to get on to that. And I think this was a clever way of alluding to the player what you can do on your island, give them some sort of idea, while also staying open-ended, especially for players that are a little lost or uncertain about what they want to do. It gives a bit of structure to those who are looking for it, cause I have seen commentary about what else is there to do after you complete the little KK Slider storyline, and I believe the Nook Miles challenges gives you an idea. In terms of what else is there to do after unlocking KK Slider or completing your Nook Miles challenges, you have Happy Home Paradise, which is an Animal Crossing New Horizons DLC, but I think it is worth it. And it is a huge improvement for those who are a fan of Happy Home Designer, which was released on the 3DS. Surprisingly, Happy Home Designer was not linked to New Leaf, and I think that's why for me it wasn't a fave. It's not that it was a bad game, but in comparison to New Leaf, New Leaf definitely had the upper hand on drawing my attention, so I think it was a great decision that Happy Home Paradise was linked to New Horizons. And if you enjoyed the decorating aspect of Happy Home Designer and New Horizons, Happy Home Paradise makes a tremendous addition. If anything, I feel like Happy Home Paradise is evident of the potential New Horizons has to show that what makes the game so great. I think it's the better example of the bridge between New Leaf and New Horizons, because I understand that New Horizons took an approach to even further the decorating process. For instance, in New Leaf, you cannot place regular furniture outside of your house. The game only allows you to place specific public works projects like benches, fountains, and trash cans outside. However, you cannot place regular furniture items outside like you can in New Horizons. So if you wanted to create an outdoor library or restaurant, you couldn't. And I'm glad they expanded this in New Horizons because it's amazing to see all the different ideas people come up with. One of my faves is that someone made their island a zoo. I thought that was hilarious. You also cannot terraform in past AC games like you could now, but a lot of people complain that while the game gives you more freedom to decorate than ever before, it feels empty in terms of your villager's personality. What drew older players into Animal Crossing was this strong sense of personal connection and community we had with the villagers and NPCs. For example, in New Leaf, you could work for Brewster and set items up for sale in the retail shop ran by Reese and Cyrus. You also had a main street, which was the shopping district of the town. This is where you would have access to shopping at the Able Sisters, getting your hair done by Harriet, and more. But New Horizons takes away this sense of community by replacing a lot of it. In New Horizons, you cannot work for Brewster. The post office is replaced with just a stack of letters. Dr. Shrunk, who teaches emotions, is now replaced with villagers and DIY recipes, teaching the player instead. Overall, it feels like the relationship the player has with their town is more of a decorum. But I think Happy Home Paradise was where it was done right, where I felt the sense of community I was looking for. For example, you have the storyline with Wardo who grows closer to you over time, and we even have a little cutscene or moment. The same with the rest of the crew when you're having a little party upstairs cheering, working at Happy Home Paradise. I felt a strong sense of self for the title, unlike how I felt about being an island representative. To me, being the island rep didn't hold weight. If anything, I'm just the island decorator, but nothing more. And it falls flat compared to the weight of responsibilities the player had in New Leaf as town mayor. But this changes with the addition of Happy Home Paradise, and I like how the villagers that are on vacation are very lively. They go to the cafe you set up, visit the school, play on the beach, water, and more, while my villagers on my main island ignore the hundreds of benches I placed for them in favor of sitting on the ground. Like, why? It's that, or they're hanging outside the resident services building, which is funny because when you do need them, suddenly they're gone. Suddenly you want to explore the island. But yeah, basically Happy Home Paradise drastically improved New Horizons for me, and I think it was done well. Another added bonus from the installation of Happy Home Paradise is the ability to renovate villager housing on your island. Of course, you have to unlock that. It's not immediately granted to you. Keep that in mind. But this is something that is later unlocked, and I was not expecting it. I remember in the early days of release, a lot of people were posting house guides on villagers, so people can decide if a villager they wanted would fit their aesthetic or island theme, and how their house may make or break that. As a result, some people would then decide their dreamy villagers based not only on villagers they like, but on how their house looks like. And so this update gave us a lot more creative freedom with our villagers, where we no longer have to worry about the exterior of their house matching our island theme. You can also redecorate the interior for your villagers, but keep in mind that unlike the vacation homes you decorate, you are limited to the square spacing of their house. You can't just add another floor or change the sizing like you can for their vacation home. And honestly, that's okay. I'm alright with that because this update was more than generous, and I never anticipate Animal Crossing to give us the creative freedom to decorate our villagers' home. And even with the limited spacing, you can still come up with something. Some of my favorite ideas is when people turn their villagers' homes into facilities. For instance, this villager's home is a theme cafe or bar. I also feel like the ability to decide where your villager lives is often overlooked. In past Animal Crossing games, you could not decide where a villager's house will be. They just pop up wherever they want. and this could be an eyesore at times. I remember one time in New Leaf, I was trying to make a garden around my house, and I had planted a bunch of flowers to make a sort of path. This was ruined the next day as my neighbor Nana chose to move in right in front of my house. Really. Trampling the flowers I had paid for and planted. Can you imagine how annoying this would be in New Horizons? You spent hours putting down pathing the day before, only for a villager to mess that up by putting their house down. I think that might be why I kept my decorating in New Leaf to a minimum, cause that incident with Nana wasn't the first time. In fact, I was so bitter that sometimes I would make sure my house was the only one surrounded by flowers. If I can't have nice things, then neither can you, was my mindset. And now that I've mentioned flowers, it has reminded me what a pain it was to maintain flowers in the previous Animal Crossing games. It's kind of funny actually, because in the previous games, my town was often bare, and then in New Horizons, my island is overrun by flowers. The problem has flipped, but I would rather have an issue with an overabundance of flowers than the struggle of maintaining flowers, because you have to take care of your flowers in the past games. If you don't water your flowers, they will wilt. Basically disappear, and then if you continuously run over your flowers, they will die, also disappear. They don't remain in spot like they do in New Horizons after being trampled. They don't regrow. You have to go buy seeds again and plant them. This is why in the previous games, it was an important etiquette to not trample each other's flowers when visiting someone's town, because they are a pain to upkeep. Now in New Horizons, I couldn't care less if someone or I were to trample my flowers. They'll grow back, don't sweat it. As I was saying, you had to make a mental note to walk over your flowers or around them, especially if you're trying to grow more flowers. And then, if you didn't log on to Animal Crossing for a while, most of your flowers have wilted because you didn't water them. Sure, some could survive if your villagers watered them, but normally they don't handle all of them, which again goes back to my point earlier about punishing the player for not playing. And I'm glad in New Horizons all this mess was resolved, because imagine feeling burnt out already in Animal Crossing, and then when you return, now you gotta include blooming flowers again, along with removing weeds. I think plucking weeds in Animal Crossing is penalty enough, and don't get me started on cross-pollination. I took what felt like forever to get green mums. I would not have the energy to crossbreed my flowers all over again. And that's why I'm honestly surprised not as many people bring up this change, because I think this was great, and I'm glad that New Horizons made these changes for maintaining flowers. Another point I want to mention is Harvey's Island, specifically his studio, and how the videography and photography in this game has been one of my favorite features for New Horizons. I like that we're able to pose our villagers and set up a background at Harvey's studio. It definitely makes it easier to take pics with some of your faves instead of chasing them around the island. I don't know why, when you pull out a camera, suddenly your villager wants nothing to do with you. Maybe that's just how they feel about me. I've had to fence my villagers in to force candid shots on my island, so I'm glad at least somewhere they're willing to cooperate. Anyways, you'll also have access to every furniture you have collected and clothing. You can then dress your villagers up, and you can also change your outfit. Actually, this is how I figured out what clothes I want to buy, because it helps me figure out what works with my current wardrobe and what I can put together. It also gives me ideas on what would look good on my villagers before ordering outfits for them. And I think this is where the Animal Crossing community continues to shine. While the game has no updates, I still see people posting pics they took of their villagers, island, house, or coming up with funny skits. We also have Harriet on Harvey's Island, which I think was a nice callback. So, in the previous Animal Crossing games like City Folk and New Leaf, Harriet ran a salon where the player could change their hairstyle and dye their hair. You could not do this on your own, and in City Folk, you could only get your hair done once per day. I don't remember if this was the same for New Leaf, but hairstyles in City Folk was definitely a love-hate relationship with the community, mainly because Harriet would ask you questions and that would determine the hairstyle she gave you. And so if you were just curious and wanted to explore your options, you could end up stuck with a hairstyle you didn't like for the day. While in New Horizons, you can immediately change out of the hairstyle she gives you if you end up not liking it. Which is great, but her feature was very short as she doesn't style your hair after she's done introducing new hairstyles to you, and it's kind of disappointing because I think there is more potential on what to do with her character. Some type of compromise can be made because I understand why a salon was scrapped. Now that the player has the ability to change their hairstyle and hair color whenever and how many times they want, there's no point in relying on Harriet for it. So this detail from New Horizons, I am on the fence about. I appreciate the change, and it makes sense since New Horizons introduced choosing your skin tone. It only makes sense that hair is included too. Plus, you don't have to worry about corresponding with shop hours, and if you want to quickly change your hair to match a fit, snap a pic, or do whatever, having access to a mirror provides greater convenience to the player. It's more efficient, but sometimes efficiency takes away from the community, interacting with others. So it's definitely a double-edged sword. I'll definitely address this further in another video, but I wanted to briefly touch on this as it does bring some good to the player and it's a change that makes sense moving forward. But I do hope that they figure out other ways to implement Harriet's salon somehow. Maybe she focuses also on wigs, which is something that Label or LaBelle used to do in Relief. She used to be a part of the shop for the Able sisters. She would focus on selling face, head accessories, and wigs, so maybe in the future Harriet can do her own special wigs, and if the player wants, they can request for random hairstyles from her. But those are just some ideas for now. I also want to provide input on commentary I've seen about New Horizons being a lot easier than the previous Animal Crossing games, that it's less of a challenge, and I think that's not entirely true. Providing convenience for the player doesn't automatically mean the game is less challenging. You can still add challenges in other aspects to keep the balance. For example, fish bait in New Horizons was a beneficial tool for me in catching rare fish. The one I had the most difficult with was the golden trout, and that took me over 200 fish bait. Maybe even 300, I wouldn't be surprised. And this was before I discovered that customizing your shovel restart its durability. So basically, I was not only crafting fish bait, but shovels too every time it broke. But I definitely preferred this headache over running back and forth waiting for a fish to spawn, like I did in the previous games. And some have said that making bells is also easier, but I think it's more so they gave players more methods. For example, you can exchange Nook Miles for a bell voucher and cash it in at the Nook's Cranny, or you can hoard bug and fish on your island until CJ and Flick arrive to sell them at a higher price. You can also check what hot items Tim and Tommy are looking for that day to craft and sell at double the price, or you can do the back in the day method of selling turnips at the stock market. Although a lot of these methods is a waiting game, basically. While you have the chance at winning it big, you can also come up with a loss, especially with the stock market method. And some days, the hot items Timmy and Tommy want aren't that good. Or you may not know the DI recipe for it just yet. Whatever you choose, you will soon come to realize that a lot of furniture is not cheap. It adds up quickly, especially if you plan to decorate your island. Literally, a chessboard in this game can cost a chunk of what could have been sent to your loan. So I think the argument that making easy money takes away the challenge is balanced out considering how quick it is to lose that money. Especially in the early release of New Horizons, it used to cost 50,000 bells to move a building, and in a later update it was changed to 10,000 bells, and I am incredibly thankful for that. You're also the one to mainly fund most, if not all, the bridges and inclines on your island. Sure, you can wait for your villagers to pitch in, but it will be a painful, elongated process if you attempt to rely on them. But despite all of this, I never truly feel stagnant or a lack of progression in New Horizons. The only thing is creative burnout, but that's more so because of how I want to decorate my island. Anyways, I do to an extent understand what other people are trying to say, because I did feel a stronger sense of accomplishment when I paid off my house debt and upgraded my house in previous Animal Crossing games than I do now. But I don't believe any of the additional conveniences takes away the challenge or the fun, if you find fun in that. Instead, I think it helps players from feeling stagnant in whatever they're trying to accomplish on their island. Overall, New Horizons may not be the perfect game, but it definitely deserves its spot in the Animal Crossing franchise and deserves some credit where credit is due. But honestly, Animal Crossing will always be that game for me. I will always make a return to it. Yes, there are things I'm disappointed with about New Horizons, but it has never been to a point where I'm done with Animal Crossing for good. If anything, I feel like people are going to look back at New Horizons years from now feeling wistful, just like they did New Leaf. Because New Leaf got criticism too. Ahem. Skin tone. Because why is a game released in 2012 not have an option to choose your skin tone? Why did it take until New Horizons? It's actually funny that a lot of Nintendo games get met with criticism, and then years later everyone is praising it. It's like Pokemon Black and White, Pokemon Sword and Shield, and so forth. It makes me wonder what the narrative is going to be like 20 years from now about New Horizons. With that said, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, This is Little Lemon Drop, dropping out. See ya, bye bye, have a good day.